Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. Many of you know me as the co-founder of Did It, a digital first ad agency that sort of went traditional through 11 acquisitions of all sorts of companies like PR agencies and creative shops. I do E-Marketing Association interviews a couple of times a week sometimes, and I also run Giving Forward, a nonprofit that's focused on cause marketing. I have the pleasure of chatting with Michael Hubbard today of Media 2. So, Michael, for those folks who don't know what you do and what Media 2 does, why don't you give them a quick background?
Hey, thanks, Kevin. Media 2 is a media buying agency. We specialize in the planning and the buying, primarily digital, but similar to you over the years, we've kind of grown into traditional and done a lot more on the other side of things where there's now more of a blurred line. And it's always become a data first, cookieless wherever we're going. It's still data and analytics driven, but for the most part, the easiest way of summing it up is we are a media buying agency.
Cool. So obviously in buying media, you want to try to make your media buy as efficient as possible, but not so efficient that you're missing opportunities. Wanamaker is quoted as saying, half of his ad budget is wasted. He just doesn't know which half. We're all faced with a situation now this year where a lot of the things we used to use to try to at least move the needle a little bit more closer to an efficient media plan, in targeting is disappearing, like third-party cookies and IDFA. So what recommendations would you have to marketers as they think through sort of how do I find that perfect level of efficiency in my media plan?
Yeah, and it's still one of my favorite quotes, and it's one of those that I think you could probably expand on it and say most people still don't understand which half to track. We're in such a strange time right now with COVID and global pandemics and really all the spinoffs of those types of things that digital transformation is probably that biggest talked about thing over the years for us. And it kind of spirals into your question of, how do you start focusing and how do you start looking and tracking? We're really all about the focus on nimble. And I think what's kind of happened is that the pandemic has kind of brought everyone up to speed. Like everyone had started a digital transformation years and years ago. But all of a sudden it went to, oh my gosh, we've lost foot traffic. We can't have people inside. What do we do now? We've got all this data. And that whole digital transformation now went to, let's figure it out today. It has to be digital now instead of digital transformation. So it's honestly, it's been a real fun time from our standpoint of, we've always preached planning, but sticking nimble. And now it's that element of, look, everyone has had this data, but they haven't been able to take the time to digest what it means and to follow it and to track it. And we've really spent the last 12 to 18 months really being able to dive into more data than we ever thought was possible and was out there. And we've been able to track more things. And really it allows us to target more things. What you thought was working a couple days ago may not be working today. I'm sitting here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and although there is no gas shortage, you wouldn't know it by driving by the gas pumps because 75% of the stations are actually out of gas today. And so what are you doing? Well, I wish we could shift all of our marketing into gas station advertising because you've got quite a captive audience right there. But there's just things happening today that didn't happen as fast as they used to. And being able to have that senior staff and that nimble staff, and I know everyone talks about nimble and it almost seems to just be a buzzword, but to be able to actually change things in a couple hours based on modern events has really been a fun time for us over these last 18 months here.
It sounds like you really want to apply Agile to marketing and to media plans. I mean, back when I was at McCann Erickson in 1992, 93, 94, media plans didn't get revisited that often. There were no digital media plans at the time, obviously. But, things would get locked in November. And, if you were lucky, you might revisit them quarterly. And this Agile media planning where you're sort of moving money around in close to real time, do you feel like other agencies have embraced that, or is that sort of really more your thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would love to say we're original. No one else is doing it, but it's a fascinating thing because I think everyone has wanted to be agile. And I'm not saying this is a marketer's issue or an agency issue, but the larger you get up on the spectrum, obviously we're a small shop, so we don't have as many barriers to moving things. Senior level, we can definitely kind of, a lot of people had issues with, oh, we've got to go remote, we've got to go home. How do we now adjust our process? Well, our process has always been nimble, but you kind of go back and you go, large corporate structures, how do we make a plan change that's been set in stone for 18 months or 2 years? I actually talked to someone last year who flat out said to me, no, look, I like to make a media plan 3 years out and adjust it maybe once a year, adjust it every quarter. And I kind of took a stand back and went, really? Like, I thought he was joking at first, but he was serious. He still did that. Well, the kind of modern day set of, are we the only ones doing it? No, we're not. But for a long time, we were the only ones that were able to be flexible. Our clientele was typically larger clients, but smaller divisions of those clients. So they had that nimbleness. And like I said, I think with digital transformation, everyone's kind of gotten to that realm of, hey, we've always wanted to do it, but we've never been able to. We've just never had the green light from a client, or the agency couldn't move fast enough. And all of a sudden, everyone went, look, we don't have a choice. Do it, and do it now. And so you've got a lot of groups that are doing it. They probably don't have as much experience doing it as we do. There's still that brand testing that has to go on. There's still those KPI tests that have to go on. You can't just jump in and change things because something changed. There's got to be some statistical relevance in your results. And you've got to be able to, see, hey, if I made this change, what's going to happen in the future? And how does that impact the overall goal and strategy? So I'd love to say we were the only ones doing it, but I really think, again, this last year, the barriers have come down and a lot of people have been allowed to do it. So it's not that they didn't want to do it, but they've actually been allowed to do it. And clients have said, yeah, where in the past they've had to go up chain of command and make sure that it got done. Now the chain of command has said, look, keep us in business. There's no one coming through our doors. Figure out the e-commerce thing, because that revenue's got to keep flowing or people are going to lose jobs. And so, yeah, it's really been a fun thing. I definitely think a differentiator for us is, we've been doing it longer. We've had that green light for a longer period of time. And again, that's where we get into that senior level hires where, I don't have to think twice about hiring someone who's never done this before and say, hey, don't forget to look out for X, Y, and Z when you do your optimizations, because they already know what they're looking for.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. We came to the real time sort of media optimization because we started in paid search, right? So obviously paid search was by definition pretty close to real time, and then we ended up in programmatic. We happen to have creative teams as well, and one of the big aha moments for us over the last five to 7 years has been how important great creative is when you're buying media in an auction. Right, because your ability to afford that media is to some extent controlled by how much the creative is great or sucks. Right, so how do you guys think about the importance of creative? When you recommend to the client, because you may or may not be doing the creative, but when you say, hey, there are 3 distinct segments in your target market, we sort of feel like you should be doing separate creative for each of them, or maybe even DCO, like, and going more granular than that. Like, that's typically not coming out of the media budget. That means they got to go talk to creative, whether it's in-house or a creative shop. So how do you make the case like, hey, my media buy is going to be better if your creative doesn't suck?
Yeah, no, so let me preface this conversation with my disclaimer of anytime I talk about creative, I have to say that I am a creative's nightmare. I'm that guy that says, build me this, and I can't tell you what it's going to take, but I can see it in my head. I just want you to read my mind. And when you do it right, I'm going to know it's right. When it's wrong, I'm going to tell you it's wrong, but I can't tell you why. So creatives hate me for the most part. But creative is such a key element. And we talk about it because we don't do creative in-house. We're a specific to the media and the data only. But we've got these kind of cool clients that as we come in, again, when you start working with the Fortune 500s, everyone's got an agency of record. A lot of them have in-house creative capabilities and things like that. And being able to see the data firsthand. And again, I think this is where our industry, I think, struggles a little bit with, how do you break into this industry? You'll typically see things like, oh, as an entry-level person, you're going to start in ad operations, and then you're going to build your way up to a junior media buyer or whatever it is. The process kind of flows. Ad operations is like the foundation of your house. And if you put junior people on the foundation of your house, it doesn't matter how pretty you make the house, it's still going to fall over, right? So when you get into this element and you go, okay, we now have senior level people running ad operations, why is that so important to creative? Well, they're the first ones that see the data changes. They're the first ones that see what happens in an optimization. They're the first ones seeing the reporting and the analytics coming through. And so then you can start to have these creative conversations and go, look, we went in and we tested 3 different sources. You've got this great piece of creative. It's beautiful. You've got this family sitting around with their kids and they're watching the TV and they're on their iPads and they're on their iPhones and they're doing all these great things. And it is the most beautiful creative I've seen. But guess what? It does not work compared to a bunch of old people in an ad. And you start to go down that realm of why does, kissing babies not work compared to old people? And you start going down that creative comparison and go, oh, well, our audience is actually 65 plus. They're the ones that are actually buying our product. And again, this is a little, basic and rudimentary for some of the conversation, but the reality is once you start to see those metrics and you can start to guide those, you can start to go back to creative and go, hey, we've got this audience and we're buying media and we're buying it at 90% efficiencies and you're getting the reach and frequency that you need. But if I continue to hit them over the head with the same boring message that's not resonating with them and not speaking one-to-one to that audience like we can, it's not going to actually push them further through your marketing funnel. And that's where you start getting into that aha moment of, oh, I get it. I understand where you're buying media that's going to support my creative and you're not telling me what to do. You're just guiding me along that process. And I think as we got into this realm of media only, so Media 2 made a change back in 2010, 2011. We used to have designers and we used to dictate how design should be done. Now it's more of a, we don't do that. We just focus on knowing what we know and doing what we do best and then having conversations with design people and going, look, this is what we know, pick our brains. You guys still do the big and beautiful and we'll guide you into who that audience should be and you just create around that. And that's where you start to see success. And again, I say it all the time because, our big pitch is we do media and we do it only media and we do it really well. But if you don't have good creative supporting it, and I don't mean great, big award winning, but just even good creative supporting it and speaking actively, your media can only take you so far. So there's definitely a lot more collaboration because I'm not as hands-on with a lot of the big agencies out there. I don't see how they do it internally, but I know from our side of things where we collaborate with a lot of in-house shops, we collaborate with a lot of other agencies out there that a client may have. We see this happening and taking up a lot more of our time than it used to over the years.
Have you ever had situations where you sort of wanted to rotate in creative more frequently than perhaps they had budgeted for their creative shop? And so now you have to make the argument, listen, you're going to have to pay more for creative because it's starting to burn out, right? We have to start rotating in the creative. We have to try new messaging, et cetera.
Yeah. And as a guy who makes his money from media, it pains me to even have to go back, but it's so important to be able to go, look, you need to rebudget more money. There are elements that we're seeing. And if we can improve your conversion rates, there's only so much you can do in the programmatic space. I mean, you're talking about CPMs that are so low now. 10 years ago, they were averaging $20, $30. Now they're averaging $2 to $3. So it's a huge variance in there. So you can only keep going so much lower on your media buys. You have to make that improvement on some of the bigger metrics, such as the conversion metrics. And the way to do that is obviously creative. And so, yeah, we've had conversations where you have to go back and go, look, I know you only had X amount of dollars budgeted towards this campaign. You have to pull some of that out of media in order to put that back into creative and be able to get us the assets that we need, or we can't spend it efficiently. And again, as a media shop, the owner in me says that's a painful conversation because we know it's taking out of our dollars. But the reality is when the focus is on client growth and client ROI, at the end of the day, if you improve that, it's all going to come back to you tenfold. So it's definitely about seeing those. And again, those are conversations we haven't even really been able to have years ago because the tracking capabilities weren't there. The analytics wasn't there. And even when the analytics was there, there wasn't always that trust between client and agency to allow you to see their back end data to be able to have those conversations. So this industry has evolved light years. And I always get asked the question, why did you get into this? I'm 22, 23 years into this industry, and it's a new job every day. I mean, it's literally a different job every day. And I think that's what keeps my self-diagnosed ADD attention span going in this, because it's a fun challenge every single day.
It certainly is. We're all having a lot of fun. This year's fun comes from sort of some curveballs that got thrown our way with regards to we're losing some of our targeting as a result of IDFA, which is happening essentially as we speak, and also with the degradation of third-party cookies, which has been going on for a while, obviously with Safari. But we loved the idea of being able to tune our media plans and tune our creative to individuals. But there's new forms of targeting coming out. There's new channels. There's new shiny objects. Is there any targeting methods that you're sort of feeling like are stepping up and becoming sort of the alternative to what we became sort of used to, which was some almost PII level of targeting? So
yeah.
now that some of that is going away, what's your next best hope for targeting?
Well, so if I start talking about cookies and third-party cookies and first-party going away and all those kind of things, you're going to lose all your viewers, because that's all anyone's been talking about the past 6 months is the cookies going away. And it is. I mean, it's going to be a cookieless world. I think the more people have started to dig into what this actually means, it's just really forced them to own and understand their own data better. What is first party versus third party? And instead of having a reliance on someone else to understand your data, they're requiring you to understand your own. So I haven't been as hands-on in watching that process and watching that flow, and how are things going to change, and how are the DMPs doing things differently from the ad servers, and so on and so forth. But the overall picture, and one of the things that I just have loved watching develop right now, is really this growth of video. And it might be, COVID specific, at some point in time, I think everyone has said, I think I've gotten to the end of Netflix. There's no more else I can consume via Netflix. But I think as you start to look at it, with a third-party cookie going away, a lot of people are talking about content and the content creation and making sure your relevant messages are now in relevant content. Well, that was always kind of the cornerstone of digital marketing, was being able to target the specific content. And it's kind of just come full circle with it. But the category that I love right now just really is everything video. And whether it's the OTT or whether it's, buying traditional TV programmatically, things along those lines that haven't been able to be done. And now they're being done more efficiently, and they're being done at really in more of a digital capacity. And that blurred line between traditional TV and digital TV is really out there. I like to see the product placements. I like to see, how is shopping in video going to now start evolving via, direct to consumer buys via video placement? But there's always the conversations too of, it scares me a bit to even mention TikTok, because I am not a TikTok guy, but, people are consuming these short videos like it's going out of style. And it's, it went from Facebook was great to Instagram is now all photos to TikTok is now all video. And you start looking at that progression and going, what is next? How is the money being made? And how can the consumers kind of start to interact more with the actual marketers that are out there? And so that side of things is fascinating more for me to watch. I don't have the crystal ball to kind of give guidance as to where it's going to go and where it's going to lead, but that it's definitely that train that I've just kind of been watching and sitting on and enjoying the ride and really kind of taking it all in. And the irony of it all is, it's probably the least numbers driven element that I've watched out of everything in the industry in years. It's really been more the bigger picture side of things. But again, the video side of things is what I think one of the stats I saw from Nielsen was during the period of the pandemic, it was a 60% global growth rate in the video consumption. So you start looking at that and going, well, will that dwindle a little bit? And the reality is everyone talks about a new normal. What is that? Where are we going to be? A year from now, is anything going to have changed, or is this going to be an ongoing cycle that we watch consumer video continue to grow? So,
yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we obviously got used to over the last few years in digital is not only being able to target very effectively, but in some cases doing dynamic creative against specific segments of the audience. One of the reasons we sort of oddly got into the direct mail business is most direct mail of moderate size, you're doing not doing it on offset presses anymore. You're doing it on 4-color lasers that allow you to do dynamic creative optimization in direct mail. And ironically, the level of targeting now in direct mail is getting to the point where it may be better than what we can do online as we lose cookie resolution and IDFA. In offline lists, you can put a whole bunch of checkboxes into your list creation for external lists, and obviously in-house lists, everything about a person. So now that where do you think DCO will shine online now that we can't sort of hyper personalize anybody? Do you think is it context? Is it are there other sort of ways that we can use dynamic creative optimization to sort of squeeze more juice out of a media buy?
I mean, it's again, it's a fascinating conversation because my wife always just calls it creepy. There's, and again, I don't have the stats in front of me, but I've always watched the studies because I'm a huge fan of everything dynamic. I'm a huge fan of making it more customized to my experience. Now, there's obviously give and take on the privacy side of things, but the consumers, again, the different studies I've seen is you have revolts of people just going, no, I do not want to be tracked. I do not want this to be customized to me. Just show me ads based on the content I'm viewing. And I think that's the realm of the safety net, where you can create the dynamic content based on where it's actually being consumed. It doesn't have to be targeted towards the specific consumer. You can probably take that dynamic element to a new level, such as, okay, that particular content, we saw these specific keywords on the page. Therefore, we can draw this into the actual creative itself. But there's still that realm of people that are, no, I don't want to be tracked. I don't want you knowing anything about me. And I'm not that person. I am still that person who, look, if I am shopping for something online and I put it in my cart and I forget about it, and 3 days later you hit me up with a reminder, I'm okay with that. So there's again, I think there's going to be a fine line on the creative side of things. And I don't think I'm qualified enough to speak to the creative, but I think from a targeting standpoint, the more finite it is for me, the better we're going to see our conversions, especially as we get into, we have e-commerce clients, we have shopping clients that we want to see. Even 0.1% lift in conversion rates is going to make the difference in millions of dollars of sales. So we want to see that, and we want to see more relevant creative. But we're still walking that fine line with the PII. And again, that's where I just don't know. And to your point on the direct mail, I mean, I love the fact that you're getting within 6 households sometimes, and and all of a sudden you can take those campaigns and you can remarket to those households in a digital format. The question is, can you still do that now with the PII, or do you have to lean truly on the direct mail pieces and traditional pieces only? So I think we're going to see a huge evolution over the next year. And it almost pains me to say this, but as many groups as there are trying to lead the charge, Google is still leading this. Google still seems to have 97% of everyone's data out there and seems to be able to point everyone in the direction they want things to go, whether it's their sandbox environment or not. So it'll be interesting to see the path they take and how many people follow suit and how many people kind of throw up their arms and go, no, there's no way we're doing this. We've got to do this a different way.
Right. It's interesting because, where there seems to be affirmative opt-in consent is on a lot of the OTT and addressable TV, right? Where with set-top boxes and stuff. And so it seems to be this is the year of Back to the Future, right? Where we're going back to contextual targeting, and we're going, we're now targeting people perhaps a little bit more granularly, but on other devices like their TV, their traditional TV. So I think it'll be a lot of fun to your point earlier about like, this is fun every day, right? It's going to be a lot of fun to sort of, rejigger, media mix models and rejigger media plans to take advantage of stuff as it rolls out.
Well, and that goes right back to your conversation before, your question before about, nimble planning where's it going to be? I mean, if you're not nimble and all of a sudden everything changes, I mean, now there's not like a quick switch that's going to flip and things like that. There's a lot of this that's already been going on, and this has been in the process for 2 years. Um, but the reality is, at some point, everyone's got annual plans and they're trying to hit those, and they've got goals and targets. And now all of a sudden you can't target anything and you can't report on things that you used to report on. The question is who's going to figure it out the fastest and who's going to figure it out first and be the most accurate with it. And you're going to see a lot more modeling, I think. Even when you get into, you're talking about Google Ads before, and I mean, they truly were the first form of programmatic. So it's a natural progression to go to programmatic after that. But even Google's conversion tracking is not one-to-one. It's more of a, hey, this is a model based on the tracking that we've seen come through. And so people sometimes will look at their conversions and they'll see like a half conversion. They'll be like, what is this? And they don't really realize that they are not exact numbers. They're more models. And I think you're going to start to see a larger acceptance of things along those lines when it comes in, but it's still a matter of who owned their first party data and who truly understood their audiences and who saw what was coming in before the change happened and how did the change differ. And it'll really come down to real sales. I mean, as you're going to see a sales trend. If that sales trend changes when third-party cookie goes away and all the video starts taking place and all these new nuances happen, you know that you weren't doing it right. And I've seen a number of people commenting on things such as, oh, well, we've seen studies out there where people pulled all their digital money and sales didn't drop off at all. Okay, well, did it not drop off today or did it not drop off 3 months from now? So you've got to start to understand your attribution models. And if you're not understanding those models now, you're probably going to be dead in the water when those things happen in the next year.
All right, well, I guess math is our friend and data is our friend as we make these decisions for our clients. It was great catching up with you, Michael. I appreciate you joining me in a conversation that other people, I think, will get pearls of wisdom from.
Likewise, I appreciate it.
All right.